I'd like to call the committee of the whole for Tuesday, May 3rd, 2016 to order with roll call, please.
Rossler,
Here.
Here.
Dudek,
Here.
McAlpine,
Here.
Kraus.
Here.
And I'd like to entertain a motion, or I guess an approval to have trustee Dave Chapman attend the meeting via teleconference. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
What's the reason?
He's ill.
That's one of the acceptable reasons? Okay.
Okay. David, are you there? Trustee Chapman?
Still on.
Trustee Chapman, are you there?
Need to go to speaker.
Yeah, he's not.
Let's proceed and recall.
Okay. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Hello, Trustee Chapman. You are welcome to attend this meeting.
Thank you.
Did you want to cite the Pledge of Allegiance? We just did.
Yep.
I'm kidding. We did it for everybody. Now I'll move to public comments where the public is asked to, any comments if they have. Anybody, I think everybody's here for a specific reason that I could see. So we'll go ahead and close public comments. Moving forward to regular business, we'll look at a consideration for the April 19th, 2016 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. Are there any changes, edits, corrections? None said, that will be on the consent agenda. Thank you. And the same for the consideration of the April 19th, 2016 Village Board meeting minutes. Changes, corrections, edits? None said, that'll be on the consent agenda. Thank you very much. Moving to the first discussion on the Cary Fire Protection District Dispatch Services.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the Committee of the Whole. It's a briefing for you, as I mentioned at the last board meeting. Over the course of the last month or so, I've been tracing an issue that has been brought forward to the Cary Fire Protection District Board. The district board is a separate taxing body that represents a number of the residents of the Village of Cary, all the residents of the Village of Cary to my knowledge, as well as some areas outside of the Village of Cary. As part of the ongoing 6 to 12 month process in McHenry County, just for the benefit of the public, through state legislation, there's been a directive that the county's 6 dispatching agencies that presently exist will be reduced down to 3 or less dispatch centers by a set time schedule that includes dates that are tied to this year. As part of that, there's been, obviously, through the Emergency Telephone System Board, of which Chief Finland represents the Village of Cary, there's been a lot of discussion, debate about how to move from 6 centers down to 3 in this county. And to date, the CCOM board, of which the Village of Cary is an equity partner, is one of the 3 remaining centers in the county. And there are 2 others, the McHenry County Sheriff's Department, as well as separately the City of McHenry Dispatch Center. And as part of that normal process, of course, 6 existed, 3 will, at least for the present time, moving forward. And there's been some consolidation. And as I've briefed you from time to time, CCOM has recently approved 2 intergovernmental agreements to service the Village of Huntley Police Department dispatching, as well as the Village of Lake in the Hills Police Department dispatching. Actually, the Village of Lake in the Hills had a center itself that provided contractual service to Huntley. That center is no longer going to be in service, as I understand it, by around the 1st of the year or to the May 1, 2017 time period. So essentially, they're folding into CCOM. As part of that shuffle, some agencies that were in other parts of the county, both police and fire, have been looking for a home and for their dispatching services. And the City of McHenry has funded through a capital plan and through a build-out plan, a dispatch center in the city of McHenry that will service their police department, their fire protection district, that's a separate taxing body, and a number of other apparent contract agencies. As part of that process, there's essentially been a bidding contest, shall we say, for services, which is logical when there's some shrinking. And as part of that process, a number of police department agencies and fire district agencies have been doing their due diligence. And as part of that process, so logically did the Cary Fire Protection District Board. They received a proposal for fire dispatch services from the city of McHenry Center. The Cary District is presently serviced by the CCOM Center in Crystal Lake, and has been the Village of Cary Police Department since CCOM's inception in roughly 2004. The issue we have before us is, and I want to emphasize and thank the Cary Fire Protection District Board for giving the village a 90-day extension in working hand in hand with CCOM to have some thought discussion about the possible change to the community. The district board has received roughly a 40% discount on its current rates as part of the bid, essentially, or the memorandum of understanding proposal they've received from the city of McHenry. That adds, well, I'll say it's probably about a $40,000 a year difference than what the current proposal they have is from CCOM. CCOM has, for contract agencies, 3-year contracts. Just by circumstance with the calendar, the contract agencies had their contracts expiring on May 1 of 2016. And so CCOM presented to all the contract agencies, of which there's about 10, a contract proposal as well, and I'm looking at it. And so I have evidence of the rates that CCOM has provided to them, and I've been told through word of mouth the rates for McHenry City. And again, it appears to be a $40,000 a year difference. The reason we're talking about this, again, that's a separate taxing body that services residents of the village, is because typically it's not viewed from a service standpoint to be optimal to have what's called fractionalized dispatch, meaning having your police department dispatch and your fire district or department dispatch be separated from one another. Today, our residents enjoy not having that be the case. And so when a resident calls 911 for a police or a fire call in incorporated Cary, it goes directly to CCOM, to a center that has both police and fire dispatch within it. And then the appropriate equipment is called out from either Cary Police or Cary Fire. This change, if it were to occur, would occur on or around May 1 of 2017, and would involve the fire calls going to be answered at the city of McHenry. And by rules, and just to simplify it, by rules of the Emergency Telephone System Board, essentially the fire agency is the prevailing agency between police and fire. And so the answering point is carried by the fire district. And so therefore, if this change is made in incorporated Cary, there would be a delay in a transfer on calls for police services to Cary residents for the time that contract is in place. And that does not occur today. So the issues are, so what does that mean? Fractionalized dispatch is not a best practice recommendation in any county. I'll say that the question quickly becomes, well, what's the delay? How long will it be? It varies. It will vary based on the efficiency level of the telecommunicator or dispatcher that is to answer the call, triage it from the standpoint of understanding what municipality the call's from, and then secondly, what agency needs to respond to it. Today, that doesn't happen. It's in the right spot, and unless it's an unincorporated call, it never goes out as CCOM. In this case, it would be a delay. It could be anywhere. We've looked at industry standards, best practices. It could be 15, 30, 45, 60 seconds based on the ability to get the message across to the dispatcher and then for the transfer to be made. When a transfer needs to be made by industry practice, it's the responsibility of the receiving agency, in this case on a fire call from a Cary address that needs to go, that would need to be relayed to police. The dispatcher at the city of McHenry would answer it, figure out it's got to go to CCOM for a police response, and then need to stay on the line for the transfer until the dispatcher at CCOM picks it up. And then the dispatcher at CCOM has to go through their protocols to get out the proper response from the Cary Police Department. From a municipal standpoint, just from a technical standpoint, it's not a good thing. Delays are not a good thing. We understand the cost elements to this from a purely financial standpoint, but it's concerning from a service standpoint to the residents. The second concern, and I added some correspondence in your packet, is the unfortunate or uncommon situation where what happens if a call doesn't come out of the dispatch center to where it goes first to get transferred to where it belongs. And there are instances, and there is litigation in the Chicago metropolitan area where calls get to a place and don't come out, and it affects the response from the public safety agency. And so that's why, as a matter of best practice, it's not recommended. We understand the economics of the decision here in this county, but it's concerning from the standpoint of dispatch practitioners. So what's before you this evening is this discussion and continued advice to you. Trustee Kraus has been able to attend some of the meetings at the fire district side, and again, we appreciate the fire district's willingness to give us the chance to talk about this, as well as the mayor and staff have been following up on this. The question is this: number one, why is there a difference in cost between CCOM and the McHenry City Dispatch Center? And just in raw math, my assessment of that is fire dispatch calls are being priced out roughly at about $51 a call by CCOM. So it's on a per call basis that calls are charged to municipalities that have fire service. And it appears that McHenry City is coming in at a $28 a call price. So it's a substantial sum to the district, and rightfully so, they need to think about it. My ask of you is at least the consideration for discussion of getting involved in the process from the standpoint of, is there a way to bridge the gap? I mean, my assessment as to why there's that $51 to $28 spread on the fire calls is purely the fact that the overhead costs are not being spread to the contracting agencies of McHenry City. So essentially the supervision of the center, the back office work, the HR, the IT, those things are being absorbed by the city of McHenry as a buffer to contract agencies, as well as, it sounds like, a substantial amount of the capital costs for the building, the equipment, those kinds of things. It's a startup center. It presently has one call taker, one fire desk, and one police desk. And it sounds as though they're heading towards, at least as I understand it, 2 fire, 2 police, and a call taker, depending upon settling on other partner agreements with cities that include the city of Woodstock and the city of Harvard. So it's an up-and-coming center that's in our county and exists. And so the question is, should we consider participating in a financial bridge for the fire district for up to a 5-year period for an extension? And I'm suggesting discussion of $25,000 to $30,000 a year for a 5-year term. To number one, let the dispatch market settle down. I mean, it's receiving a lot of churn because of the state law, which was designed to help, induce consolidation, but the state law was not designed to induce fractionalized calling. And that's what it's happening in this case, and it may happen in other cases in the county. And from a raw math standpoint, when I started here in 2011, our dispatch bill was approximately $340,000 annual. Based on call volume evolution and cost management, our bill annualizes about $290,000 a year. So it's down about $50,000 a year since 4.5, 5 years ago. Not necessarily what you want to be spending on to subsidize another taxing body, but the fact is, that pricing in the marketplace in Lake County, in Cook County, for a town of 18,000 residents is very competitive. The bill that the fire district has from CCOM now is about $95,000 a year, ballpark. It basically, in CCOM space, subsidizes about a little more than 1 full-time employee with salary and benefits. Essentially, they're able to get a 40% or so write-down on that 1 employee by going to City of McHenry. So my ask of you tonight is to answer your questions, and secondly, the consideration of some subsidization. I'm a board member of the CCOM Center, but I represent the Village of Cary first and foremost, and I've talked with CCOM, on the village's behalf conceptually about the issues, the cost differences, et cetera. And CCOM is willing to participate in the solution for the Cary Fire Protection District as well as the Village of Cary. And I think there'll need to be some discussion with the Fire District Board about, possibly a three-way, look at this. The alternative is let it go and have fractionalized calls. And I just don't know how long that would be for and if it would ever come back. Last comment before we open it up for discussion is the state law continues to change. There continues to be successful consolidations. And there are municipalities such as right now Aurora and Naperville that represent about 400 or 450,000 citizens. And they are considering merging to one center for that many people. And as you understand, our county is 300,000 residents. So, the fact that we have 3 centers is, somewhat the reality, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end game. And so I think it's important to recognize that from the standpoint of long-term planning. So I want to get your feedback and answer any questions tonight before any further discussion or meetings that are held on this issue.
You stated that McHenry was a startup, a new one. How long have they been? Is it new this year? Like, are they just starting up or?
I'll say that they've had a center for themselves essentially,
Oh,
and their fire district, and a couple of small contracts. But when they successfully pitched to become one of the 3 remaining centers, they headed more towards a multiple agency platform, and they're looking to pull business in.
And then you stated also that the fire district's bill is currently about $95,000 a year.
Yeah.
And the contract is up in May.
Yes.
What kind of an increase are we seeing from the previous contract?
Sure. I have their as written rate unmodified. This is essentially what they had before this discussion began. And these are projections. This is the high end of what it would cost because it's based on actual calls, and there's projections of actual calls because you get it. It's a per call rate. So the center kind of gives them an estimate. For 2016-17, it's $51.35 a call. And the maximum ceiling on increases is set in the document, I believe, to be 5%. That is the high end of what their bill would be. In essence, it's in raw dollars, which is easier, I think, to operate with. They're paying $95,000 to $100,000 to CCOM if they stay with them under the current rates, unnegotiated. You follow me?
So that's pretty similar to what they were paying last year.
Yeah, it's up. It's up a CPI type factor of about 4 or 5%, but it's up.
Not the 25 to 35,000 that they're seeing the discount from McHenry.
Right.
Did our bill didn't go up like $50,000
No.
to the fire department in 1 year or something?
No, you're right.
Okay.
What it is that a new provider came into the market and is writing rates that are 35, 40% less than the rack rate from CCOM.
Okay.
How long of a contract are they offering to the fire protection district? Do you know?
Yeah, initially this was a May 1, 2016 to April 30, 2019 period before the rate negotiation began, I guess, if that's the right way to explain it. And CCOM's willing to extend them a 5-year deal to extend the term, fix the rates in a different way, talk about some of the cost factors, et cetera, along with other subsidy. And I want to say that I don't believe it's possible to solely lean on CCOM to make the changes to keep them. I've had direct conversation with both board members at CCOM as well as Chief Macko at the district. And I think I certainly see some progress being made there, but that divide is such that it was going to require somebody like Cary to participate to fill it.
Is McHenry City's dispatch center, is that an extension of the police department? Who's going to be running that? Is it going to be part of their command staff that's running it, or is there a dedicated dispatch center director like we have?
As how I understand it, it's an employee of the city of McHenry that will be assigned, substantial duty to oversee this. There's also a board that would have police chiefs, apparently fire district chiefs associated with it that would sit and oversee the center. But obviously, you understand the day-to-day operations require, 24/7 oversight by staff. And my understanding is that it's city McHenry employees.
In 2004, when Kerry created this, or partnered with CCOM, or the other two entities, was the fire department supposed to be an equity member?
I can try to answer that from what I've seen of the files and the history. There was a lot of debate and discussion that went on for, as I understand it, a number of years when CCOM was created in '04. Ultimately, it went on in the county amongst a number of agencies for a long time, and it settled out that three partners kind of rose forward after that debate and discussion and said, all right, we're doing it this way. And that ended up being, at the time, the municipalities of Crystal Lake, Algonquin, and Cary. And then others were offered contractual service level through that, and those contracts grew as the years went on. And so the three equity partners are the three municipalities, and they're voting members of the board. And there are two committees, one of fire chiefs and one of police chiefs, which have chairs for both that have representation on the board. And they meet monthly, and they, quite frankly, they deal with operational decisions day to day, standard operating procedures, any issues with calls that come up through the police discipline or the fire discipline. The board itself, of voting membership, predominantly focused on budget, any staffing issues. We brought a new director in after a recruitment process about 18 months ago. Those kind of oversight functions are what the board does. So there's a committee structure for feedback from the chiefs that help to determine the operating procedures in CCOM.
Does Crystal Lake and Algonquin, are their fire departments separate?
Good question. The city of Crystal Lake has a fire department that's part of the municipality. The village of Algonquin has a district that services essentially Algonquin Village and Lake in the Hills Village. It's a district that provides the fire service, beyond those municipal boundaries. And that district is a contract partner of CCOM today, the Algonquin Lake in the Hills District. You understand the Crystal Lake Municipal Fire is part of the city, so they're an embedded part of Crystal Lake's equity partnership, whereas the Lake in the Hills Algonquin District is more like our district in terms of being a contract partner.
Has Algonquin, have they been approached by McHenry?
Do you mean the district? All I know is that, there's other districts in the county and other small contracted agencies that are evaluating options. And it's not a surprise from the standpoint of the change that's happened in the county and somewhat of the shakeup. But I don't know where that's going. And it's a good question, because the issue here is precedence and how does one decision affect others. That's, I think, where you're heading with it. And I get that. And I don't have all the answers, because that'll probably go on for the next 3 to 6 months, the way I see it. I know that all the contract agencies from CCOM have these proposals from CCOM now, and they're holding them, and they're effective May 1, and a number have signed them. But there are a couple that are asking for extensions to look at options and things like that. So that's still progressing.
In areas that do have fractionalized dispatch, I've heard that term several
Yeah.
times tonight, have there been documented cases of delay and issues arising from that?
The biggest concern is I'll say the anomaly type situation where you have a call that doesn't come out. And those are not at all commonplace in our research, but they happen from time to time. And they often occur in cases of a significant issue at the household. Any kind of, integrated police fire situation can be complicated. Those are the calls that we're concerned about. The delay of 30, 60, 90 seconds isn't good. I mean, it's not what we'd like to see. We don't have it now. Our bigger concern at staff level is those calls not coming out and not being confident in the employee type situation at that center, with no control over it, counting on it to come out. And, I mean, that's just our perspective at this point.
So currently, if a resident of Trout Valley called 911, where would that call go to?
Well, I would assume, I can't answer that tonight. From a Trout Valley standpoint, I can't speak
Does it
to.
go to the county?
I believe so, yeah. Because I believe that the district, and they've told me when I met with Chief Macko, let's say an unincorporated call, they don't get that direct now if they're serving it within their district. So they'll get a transfer from, say, the county back to CCOM to get dispatched. You follow me? So there are cases, I believe today, when it's unincorporated, where on the fire side, there's a transfer. And, I mean, they just have worked with that.
Okay. If anybody else has anything, go ahead. I'm going through my notes.
Yeah.
I'm just, is CCOM beginning to realize economies of scale? I mean, it seems like we got a lot of entities going into it, but costs are going up. So I'm just sort of wondering, with this move by Cary Fire Protection District, it seems like their fees should be going down.
I understand. I can answer at a high level and tell you that when Lake in the Hills Police Department and Huntley Police Department came in, it's building economies of scale. And there is, as you understand it, I mean, the center should have a return on investment for taking on new liability. Every time you take on a new agency, there's liability. You understand that. And, I mean, a call drops, you're taking one, large chunk of residents over. We have the same staffing levels. We are looking at 5 full-time positions to service those 2 police departments with the rates that are charged. But yeah, there's a return on investment to the center that is designed not to do anything but to reinvest in the center from an equipment standpoint, help us to keep flatline rates to the extent that we can. You've seen ours have gone down 50,000 over the past, since 2011. But yeah, I mean, it's helpful to have more base. I'll say that, especially on the police department side, the ROI level is higher than the fire district side. I mean, it's just the raw economics of dispatch. But we handle the dispatch for fire as a service because it avoids the fractionalization. There's not a lot of ROI at all on fire dispatch. In this center in CCOM, in Cook County and Lake County, it's predominantly a service. And it's just able to be bid differently because oftentimes, historically, police departments have just been the home of these fire dispatching operations for many years, and municipalities have just inherently subsidized it over time. So the fire rates are much lower on scale than police is by matter of circumstance.
How does this play out then with other members of CCOM that see that, okay, Cary's subsidizing the fire department? How does that play out?
Good question. I'll answer it 2 ways. One, from the standpoint of my perspective, there's 3 equity partners in the center: the city of Crystal Lake, the village of Algonquin, and the village of Cary. And we've been equity partners since it was established in 2004. We have responsibility for some of the bond payments that we still have when that center was built. And so it's my perspective, and I said this more than once, that the district of the village of Algonquin for fire and the district of the village of Cary for fire can be treated differently because we are equity partners of that center. Yes, it's a different taxing body, but from the standpoint of building a business case to have maybe a little different rate model, it's my opinion that that's conceivable. It's not without challenge, but I think Lake in the Hills, Algonquin District, and Cary District ought to be looked at differently than the other 8, 9 agencies that we have. And by matter of billing, the Algonquin District is I think the first or second highest cost contract we have. The other high one is the Huntley Fire District, which is a separate taxing body. So that's one answer. My second answer is the city of McHenry's consolidation has already unearthed this. The city of Woodstock was one of the agencies by declaration of the Emergency Telephone System Board that had to fold their dispatch center, okay, that they've had in service for years. And they were dispatching the fire out of Woodstock. I can't recall. I think that's a district up there in Woodstock as well. When Woodstock had, by directive, to fold, they headed to City of McHenry. And as part of that consolidation, the city of Woodstock has agreed to fund for a 5-year term a $36,000 subsidy to the Woodstock Fire District to avoid the fractionalization. Now, their economics are different than ours. We were able to benefit from the economies of scale of folding our in-house dispatch center, 14 years ago, and we've enjoyed those savings ever since. Woodstock's enjoying them now. And so, I mean, they're going from a expense rating like $800,000 a year down to like $300,000-400,000. So they got an enormous savings that they're now accruing, and so they have some ability fiscally to deal with some of the fractionalization through that savings, because you understand their general fund budget at the end of the day has a nice savings. Our position is that we've had that savings since, the early part of the 2000s, and at the same time, our rate, we can easily compare it to other similar sized municipalities in McHenry, Lake, and Cook County, and find that about $300,000 or $350,000 a year is a solid rate. So.
Is CCOM adding staff because of the consolidation and adding Huntley and Lake in the Hills?
Before all this logical competition for small contract business, it was intended to have a 5 full-time employee hire base to pick up the Huntley Police and Lake in the Hills business. So that is the plan at this moment. If there's mass changes in contracts, we'll look at it. But, I mean, you understand, there's 2 ways to look at losing business. One way is to shrink the operating costs, and so we'll certainly have to deal with that as this continues to evolve. But.
I guess that sort of relates to my next thought. Our CCOM, I mean, can we delay this a little bit to see where other municipalities come in or don't come into CCOM, and how that would affect overall rates? Are these rates going to change if a bunch of municipalities come into CCOM? Is that going to affect what happens to the fire district's rate?
And your point is our rate, right?
Right.
The village's rate.
All of it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I understand. What I can explain is we're at contract renewal phase for these 3-year terms. And from what I understand in the last couple of days, I mean, it's May 3rd, the contracts went live May 1. Many of them are being renewed, but the big ones are under discussion. And what will that mean to the center? I don't have all those answers, because if there's lost business, we have to look at each element and decide, how to deal with that. From the standpoint of Cary Fire, I believe we have this 90-day window, and they have an obligation to City of McHenry to make a move or not, and they're going to lose the seat in line if we don't make a swift decision. And that has nothing to do with CCOM. That has to do with their deal with City of McHenry. It seems very apparent to me that they have some pressure to make a move, because City of McHenry is doing a very challenging job of trying to fold 3, 4, 5, 6 agencies all at once into a center all at one time and making it work. And so they don't have a lot of ability to have a lot of uncertainty for long.
I have a few questions. Have you talked to any towns that utilize the fractional dispatch and how it's impacted them since they've gone to that?
I haven't talked to ones in the last week that are affected by this, but I have experience with them in Lake County and Cook County, and it's in the eye of the beholder. And, I believe from what my experience has been, and Jason Kern, our executive director, is not here tonight from CCOM, as well as Chief Finland. But it's not unheard of, but it's not the choice. The state law specifically addresses not wanting to have fractionalized dispatch. And, consolidation is occurring not to spread people out, but to shrink cost for all the taxpayers. But it's not, I would say that you can talk to different chiefs and get different answers. So
Right.
Our chief is concerned about it from the standpoint of his calls, but primarily concerned about the unknown factor of losing a call and having an issue on a scene. I'll also say that his concern, and speaking on his behalf tonight, we have fire instances that occur, from time to time. We don't have too many fires in the area, but we do from time to time, and we had one recently, and it's clearly more convenient to have everybody dispatched out of one house. To have a scene where chief is calling for fire assistance and calls McHenry City to get down to CCOM to get dispatched out is not a great ending, but it's just depends on how it's managed, so.
Well, so if I call 911 from my house in Cary, it's going to go to CCOM, correct?
Today, yep.
So when I tell CCOM, I'm having difficulty breathing, I need fire, that dispatcher's on the line from CCOM.
Right.
At that point, he or she could dispatch a police over right away, knowing they're transferring that call to McHenry?
Today, I mean, I'm talking about today, how it works for a
Correct.
resident today
But-
without a change. They have all of the services that they need in one call with no transfer.
No, and I get that. I guess my question is that should we go to fractionalized dispatch? If I were to call from my house today, call 911, and we were fractionalized, that call would still go to CCOM, correct, first?
Yes, if you called 911 from Cary, this change had already been made.
Right.
The dispatcher's going to ask, what's your location and what's your issue, to discern if it's a police issue or an EMD issue, because at least in this county, EMD is priority. And so they want to have immediate instructions by the dispatcher about what to do if somebody's ill, or very ill, and get that moving. And if it's a police call, if it's a burglary, if it's a car issue, those kind of things, hold on, essentially, and they get the other dispatch center on the line. And then when CCOM answers it and they hear that it's audibly being then taken, then CCOM's dispatcher carries it through the police dispatch.
Right, so I guess there wouldn't be that delay then, is what I'm, just from experience, because where I work, it's fractionalized dispatch, and that's what happens. The dispatcher will answer the phone, they ascertain if it's police or fire. If it's fire, then it does get transferred over to another entity, but that dispatcher still listens and then dispatches police. So there's still that connection there. The other thing I wanted to ask was, as far as taxing bodies go, how much does the village receive percentage-wise versus the fire department?
For what now?
Like, percentage of $1, my taxes, what percent of my taxes, $1, is going to go toward the village versus the fire department?
I can't necessarily speak to the fire district percentage, but I believe the village is typically about 5 to 6% of the overall property tax bill. But I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that we also have sales tax, we have other revenue streams that some taxing bodies don't have that are, by example, the schools are primarily focused on a property tax. We have more diversified streams. I don't know of the tax bill what the fire district is, but it's probably not dissimilar from the village's share. But it needs to be pointed out that the revenue streams are different.
And that's my question, and that's what it relates to, is that if we're subsidizing them, if they're getting the same amount that we are or more, I'm just trying to process that.
I totally understand, and it is the philosophical issue in this discussion about subsidizing another taxing body that got a discount on a rate. I mean, and the reason we're talking about it is because it's public safety dispatch. Obviously, if it was a phone contract or if it's something else, I mean, that's their business decision. Here, it has a secondary impact on our residents that they don't experience today, and that's why we're discussing it. So, Chief, did you have something to add? We were just going
If there was a
through.
need for clarification, I'm here now. I'm sorry I was late.
That's all right.
But I'm very familiar with Lake County and the way things are done in Lake County. And in McHenry County, right now, they route the 911 calls to fire first. So if fire was to go to McHenry City, then that's where the 911 call would go first, get screened, and then be transferred. And, one button transfers in regards to time is as good as how the dispatcher operates. And my concern with a fractionalized dispatch is the fact that there's more than one party touching this call, right? And there's an opportunity for something bad to happen as it relates to the transfer, and that is evident in Coleman versus Joliet Fire Protection District, where right now there's a tort immunity issue, and the fact that, that was the impetus for that rule to be reconsidered by the Illinois Supreme Court, right? So that's one of the things. But the other thing is that we have de facto interoperability because the police and fire department or fire protection district are being answered by the same dispatch center right now. So they're in the same room, something happens, we can say, hey, call them up, and they just turn around. Now it would be some other method, either an interoperability channel, where we'd have interoperable channel, where we'd have to talk and say, come on up after we had them staged, or call a different dispatch center to have them tell the fire apparatus to come up now because they were staged. So there's going to be a change in the way the business is run.
So all 911 calls would then go to McHenry first?
Yes, because in Lake County, at one time, the landline calls were routed by fire district. Wireless went to the sheriff. And now because they can route the cell faces to the PSAPs, they're doing that now, or have done that now. Here, all wireless 911 calls go to the fire protection district first.
Will that ever change?
That's exactly how it was just changed not too long ago.
It's being discussed, but it's not what's allowed now. And the argument that's been made in the county and is not uncommon in other counties is that it's because the EMD needs to happen right away, as opposed to possibly the ability to deal with the delay a little differently on the police side.
You know,
But it's not a one-size-fits-all rule throughout the state.
now, in McHenry County, because they had PSAPs that didn't have fire dispatch responsibilities, they did route some calls to those PSAPs, namely Lake in the Hills. But Lake in the Hills is dissolving, and those individual entities are now looking at different PSAPs to have, to secure their dispatch services from right now.
Are there any other benefits that McHenry offers the fire department besides just the cost benefits that we're looking at?
I can try to answer that. The cost is the main issue, and I believe some of the governance that they have is a little bit different than CCOM from the standpoint of a chief's role in the oversight, and he's told me that. So, those are what I'd say to be the two main issues.
So Chris, the dollar amount impact is, give or take a little bit, $30,000 per year?
Annual times 5.
Okay. Is it possible that if we took our business to the McHenry site, that as a charter member, the cost of CCOM get higher and then we get billed? I don't know how all the billing works, I'll be honest with you, but I'm assuming that if we take some business away from an organization, there's still amount of overhead that has to be covered. So I'm assuming that perhaps the charter members get a bill saying, well, we don't have as much income anymore, so here's...
Well, I thought I answered that when I laid out in a general way the ROI. There's new ROI to the center from the Huntley and Algonquin deals, or the Huntley and Lake in the Hills deals. Mm-hmm. And that has been not designed to be offsetting situations such as this, but there is new ROI. So, that is part of my answer to how that will be dealt with. But that has voting folks that are beyond me. I'm one of 3. And, they're being real businesslike and professional about the whole situation. It is a fact of life in this county. But the fact is the center cannot absorb the entire deficit. That's why we're talking about a subsidy.
Okay. Well, then I guess my 2 feelings are, if we pull out and we end up getting billed on the other side, maybe the cost isn't that much. And I understand you've got some additional participants, so that kind of offsets that. But if they weren't there, we would have to be paying more, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, maybe it's not the exact number that you're talking about. That's one thing. But maybe even more important to me is, and I read this case, and I'm not any attorney, and it's interesting to listen, to read all the different things that happen there and the liabilities. But at the end of the day, we're potentially talking about human lives for $20,000 or $30,000. And I know we don't have $20,000 or $30,000 we can pull out of thin air, but human lives are always going to mean something to me. And so, at this juncture, I'm more inclined to, re-up, pay the extra money, and, let the chips fall where they may, and see if CCOM can continue to add to its client base, which was designed to do, right out of the chute.
Has Carrie ever looked at going to McHenry City
We can at this time, due to the agreements tied to the bonds.
for the contract?
After the bonds are paid off, which I believe is December 19, the village may have some options, but at this time, we wouldn't advise it. But, I mean, that's the answer to that. I expected that question.
And there's still moving parts on this too, in terms of, just like in Lake County, everyone's going to Starcom, and there's some analysis that has to be done, and there might be some efficiencies to scale that come down the road in a couple of years.
How does the board feel about, I guess the action step is, we're in discussion with the fire district board. They're going to continue having their own discussions. It's ultimately their call. They're on essentially the shot clock with CCOM, so that's why it's before you now.
I'd like to see us continue to try and work with the Fire Protection District and see if we can come up with something, because to reiterate what Trustee Dudek said, I think that all it takes is one human life that we have a problem with, and it's not worth the risk. So I'd like to see if we can come up with something that would maybe tie into the December 19 when the bonds are done, and say, can we do something of a 3.5-year agreement with the Fire Protection District Board, and see if we can get something on board there, because when we hit December of 19, we have a little bit more negotiating options for all of us. But I think there's just too many moving parts right now to know what's going to really happen at the end here.
I just feel like we're sort of accepting an issue that's not wholly ours. I understand what Trustee McApine and Trustee Dudek say about lives, but I really don't believe that the fire chief is going to put lives in jeopardy with decisions they're making. So it sort of feels to me like we're being put in a position to make the decision and be the bad guy or good guy. And it's not really our decision, it's their decision that's being made. And now we're answering to that decision. And I really don't feel very good with that whole situation, paying for another taxing body, so.
No, yes.
I think I mean, yeah, when you paint it in terms of a life, how else are you going to react? But I think, as Trustee Kozler stated, I don't think the chief of the fire department, Chief Macko, would be moving in this direction if he thought there was any kind of concern along those routes. I asked if there was any issues in the past with other communities that are fractionalized or anything. Kim, you said you haven't really seen it over there. Chris, you didn't really have examples.
Except for the case that we gave you.
The one in the, yeah. Ultimately, I guess it is up to the fire department. I mean, we can continue to, try to work with them and see what we can come up with, but ultimately it is the fire department's decision.
Rick, you're in favor of supporting it. Kim, where are you at?
Based on my experience, we haven't had any problems, so I'm not going to be in favor of subsidizing another taxing body.
Trustee Chapman?
Yeah, Chris, one thing, a side note, could I get a list showing the call volumes for CCOM for 2013, 14, and 15? If you could break it out for the police and fire,
Yes.
that would be a huge help for me. And I'm willing to listen, for at least one more meeting while we're talking with the fire department about this. And I really want to find out about whether or not fractional calls. I would be just appalled if the state, legislature didn't look at this when they enacted the reduction of the call centers. So I'm gonna defer and say I'm on the fence with this, but I definitely want to find out more about the fractional, especially after hearing Kim and Chief.
I'll provide the data you asked for, and I'm listening to what the trustees are asking for as or case history about issues with calls that are delayed. I don't think there's a debate about the delay. I also know that there's not a debate about Chief Macko's position in this. I mean, he's doing what's best for the agency he represents. The issue here is simply it has offsetting decisions and issues for the police agency, which is not part of his agency, it's part of the village boards. And so that's why we're having a discussion. I'm glad to continue to dig in from a research standpoint on the issues, and I appreciate that there's different experience. I just think that now's the time to be making it, because once the decision's made, it's done, and there isn't any real ability to change it. So we'll continue to collect more information. Thank you for your feedback tonight.
Chris, real fast, is there any McHenry, is there any cities in McHenry that use fractionalized dispatch? Not Lake County, but McHenry County?
Yes, there has been, and
I'd
based
be
on some of the
interested to see
swap
what their
outs.
feedback would be,
Okay, sure,
since they have a different system.
okay, sure.
Right, we'll come back to this another day. Thank you. Moving on to the next item that we have is the review of the community grant program applications.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the Village Board and Committee of the Whole. To talk about this in detail, we've received a number of applications from some great projects, possible project programs in the community through a grant program. The Village Board within the last year has had a lot of debate and discussion about how to encourage more special events in Cary to occur. And through that debate and discussion, there has been the growth of the Cary Fall Festival that has been created and operated by the Chamber of Commerce. The board wanted to take it to the next level and look at a revenue source for maybe other projects and programs. And within the last couple of years, the village decided to approve video gaming at some establishments in the community. And annually, our budget projection for the budget that just went into effect May 1st projects about $63,000 in annual revenue from video gaming. That is subject to fluctuation. We know that the city of Crystal Lake just approved gaming licenses, and so we watch those revenue projections carefully. However, through the budget process that you deliberated in March, $30,000 was set aside for community grants for these type of programs. You've been distributed 9 or 10 applications from about 7 agencies that asked for your consideration. To boil down some of your discussion decision, I think it comes down to the fact that the budget's $30,000. We had about $85,000 in requests for expense for the 9 or so applications that we received. There was one that was pulled, I informed you of this week. So we have $30,000 for about $80,000 or $85,000 worth of asks. So I would ask that first you decide or consider at a high level, do you want to go down the path of funding 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 programs solely and have the tough challenge of saying no to the rest? Or do you want to split it up and somehow distribute out some amount to all qualified requesting agencies? I think if you started your discussion at that level, you might come to consensus fairly quickly. So that's my comment.
Well, I'd like to see us split them up a little bit. We have multiple requests. I'd feel bad saying you're more important than another, so I'd like to see us distribute it. I'd like to see us to stay within the $30,000 budget and not go past that.
Any thoughts about the spread it around approach versus picking a couple?
I agree with Trustee Cavelli. We should keep it within the $30,000 budget. And I'm okay, not okay, but I am of the mindset to spread it around amongst all the groups.
We don't necessarily have to make a decision tonight. I think these events are going to happen regardless of whether or not we fund them. I think wasn't really what I was anticipating, to be honest. I know in the past, we had had some money set aside in the budget. We thought we would use it more for the Historical Society if something came up with them, or the Cary Arts Association tied in with that, and then they would just come before us. I think with this application, it kind of opened the door up and said, hey, you know, here's some money, come and apply for it. I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss in terms of what we should do. I'll listen to some more conversation.
Trustee Dudek?
I think the only difference of opinion I might have is that I view personally the farmers, not the farmers market, the Cary Festival a little bit differently. It's multi-day, it's much bigger. I mean, you really can't compare some of these that are here to the festival that we started a couple years ago. So to me, while I would like that festival at some point to be self-funding, you know, we recognize that it's not there today. So I would agree that I would like to see everyone who petitions be able to receive some percentage of money. I just take the Cary Fest and put it outside that budget. And to me, I kind of view the Cary Fest as its own budget for some line item. And then whatever line item we have for other festivals, that should be divvied up. So I separate the two. And my logic is simply that the Cary Festival is way different in nature than any of these things that are here, in my opinion.
I would agree. When I looked through the applications, I thought that the two that stood out to me that I thought held some merit in terms of what I kind of had envisioned in terms of community events, the farmer's market and then the Fall Fest. Those were the two that kind of stood out. That was something that I thought maybe that's something the village should think about trying to subsidize and help out to get them on their feet. As Rick said, the Fall Fest was something that originally we did the 25,000, then last year we did the 10, and it was, we were on that pathway to try to wean them off of what we were giving them in terms of making it a self-sustaining event. The farmer's market, I think, is something else that it's an ongoing event in the community. It draws a lot of people downtown. It seems to be something that I had in mind when I was thinking about this program.
Trustee McAlpine?
Sure. I think, first of all, it would be wonderful if we had unlimited amount of resources to fund everything, because all of these, you know, people took a lot of time and a lot of effort. So I'm too of the opinion that I'd love to see everybody get something. And I too would probably put a distinction between the Main Street Fest, as it's a huge community-wide two-day event, and also the farmer's market, because it's an ongoing. It's not a one, you know, some of these are one day, a certain event. But again, I like the idea of people coming out and us as a village giving back to our residents in some manner and using the gaming funds, a portion of it, to me is an optimum way to do it. So I'm open to doing some allocation. But you also have to look at what overall budgets are compared to, I kind of analyze it saying, okay, here's what this overall budget is versus the ask. And if someone's asking for 50% of it versus someone asking for 20%, you know, it's trying to see how do we remain fair? How do we as a board say, we're not going to pick a winner and a loser, but are we doing that if we say we're going to give someone 50% of their budget, we're giving someone else 20 or 10% of theirs? So that's, I think, what we have to kind of look overall to make sure that we are doing our due diligence on all these. But I think all of these have great merit, and I appreciate the fact that everyone took the time to do that, and I like the village being able to sponsor some of these for our residents.
Trustee Dudek, when you were talking about the budget item for the Fall Fest, were you thinking of a separate line item outside of the $30,000? Or have that be a majority part of this $30,000?
I think the Fall Fest is different, and I think it should be separate, because at some point, and I don't know what that point is, but I think the board probably ought to have that discussion maybe in budget time, assuming you go that direction. How long do you want to do this? I mean, the festival's been very successful, but perhaps the board's not going to want to do it ad infinitum. You want to call quits at some point in time. So, but I like separating it out, because I just think it's a very different event than all the other petitioners.
Well, it depends on how you want to define separating it out. the budget aggregated it in 30,000. The ask was 25,000 for that one event. I looked at the application just at a high level. It asked for 15,000 for entertainment, music, children's activities, and then there was a separate bucket of 10 for promotional materials, flyers, advertisement. I mean, you could probably pick out one of those two, the 10 or the 15, and from what I've listened to from many of you over time is that somewhere in that range is what most people have settled on, not all necessarily. So in an effort to bring it to a head and then decide what's left for other distributions, that might be helpful tonight. If you believe that it should be higher than the $15,000, then say so. The event itself, I mean, we've had experience with it. You know, just in my rough ballpark, it's probably $90,000, $100,000 event to run, and you got to bring in income to run that off. And so, I mean, you put 15,000 in perspective. I think the other important point to make note of is that we have been and plan to continue so budgetarily subsidize some of the labor that goes into it that we estimate to be worth $5,000 to $6,000, which is on top of or in addition to whatever amount that you have. So I think it would help know what to distribute to the other groups as well by deciding the chamber tonight.
I think I'd want to stay at the 10,000 that we did last year for the Fall Fest.
That's where I was at too, 10,000.
Outside of the grant budget or within
No.
I
the
would
grant?
keep it in, I'd keep it in also.
Yeah, I agree.
So would I.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. And would, is there,
So that, let's be clear, that's 10, and then
from the
not
30, so-
not including labor.
right, so it would be 15 to 16 as we did last year,
That's with labor, right?
with labor, yeah. In-kind services, we'll call it.
Trustee Dudek, is that,
Public Works
does that
and-
work?
I'm only one voice.
Well, now's your time to be heard.
$38.88 per person in the village of Cary to give them 25 grand. I vote for that, but I'm one person, so, you know, there's no reason to discuss it anymore.
Well, the issue is you could bump up the number a bit. It's just a balancing out of what we have for other events.
Yeah,
But I think,
Trustee Dudek, I understand what you're saying there, but we went down the path last year of reducing it to 10 to wean off to 0 the next year. So I would love to have unlimited funds to give people to have events, but that's not the case. In fact, we're dealing with a very restricted budget right now, and these funds are precious. So I don't agree with going outside this budget. I think 10 is very fair, considering what we've given in the past, and I stick hard at 10.
I have no argument, I'm just voicing my opinion.
Chris,
Yes.
I noticed something in the Downtown Fest budget that was missing in it. First of all, thank all those community groups that submitted. That's phenomenal, and that's great. But I noticed that the in-kind services was not in their budget, and I'm wondering if we could maybe find out what that was. How much it was. It wasn't an income and expense in their budget.
Yeah,
I know you
estimated
told
it.
us last.
Yeah, when you asked me about that, I estimated it, because the first year, you understand, was we hadn't done it before, so we were long on cost. Last year, we were able to refine the numbers from a village labor standpoint. So I said 5,000 to 6,000 is what we absorbed separate from the contribution.
Okay. The big part for me is the in-kind services, is being involved with, Cary Days Carnival. That was a huge cost for the event. So any groups that apply for that, I know there's like the 10K run, there has to be some kind of, public works help and probably even some, police costs. Some of the groups didn't include that in their budgets, which is fine. I mean, this is the first year, and this is our
Right.
job is to help them. But I think that's an important factor, and maybe we need to look at that from each of the groups.
Very good.
Some of them didn't include it, so.
My only concern is to make sure that where we're at with the other, if it's 20,000 additional, that we really kind of have a relation between what the expense of the budget is versus how much we're giving them. Because again, I don't want to be in a situation where we're saying, you know, chamber here, we're going to give you 10% of your budget, and we're giving other people 40 or 50%. So, I mean, that's my concern with saying that we need to really be cognizant of being equitable to everyone that's applied, if that's how we're going to approach it.
Well, and I think some of them, when I looked at the budgets and that, it looked like it was almost 100% of the budget.
Right, and
being
that
asked
was my
for.
concern. I don't think that that's fair to say, all these are great activities, but we're going to fund some of them at 80% of your budget and someone else at 10.
It's a fair point.
Chris, could you read the list of the projects? Is that appropriate?
Mayor Koenig has the list right here.
I'd be
Okay.
happy to, Trustee Chapman. The Trojan Track and Cross Country Association have a Father's Day 5K, 10K race, and their grant request is $5,000.
And we should indicate that that event, I believe, is June 12th.
Yeah, it's very smooth.
It doesn't say that on my cover sheet, so, but, the second one is St. Peter and Paul School. The event is in Oktoberfest. Their grant request is $14,050. Another one from St. Peter and Paul School is Cinco de Mayo. The grant request is $12,000. We had one, which I was excited about, actually, the Cary Grove J.C.'s Little Fins Fishing Derby. I thought that would have been a gas for these little kids, but they have withdrawn their application. Their request was only $700, by the way. So if anybody wants to pick that up, I think that would have been great at J.C. Park. It's a great opportunity. Anyway, I digress. Cary Grove J.C.'s, the event is Family Days, and their request was $8,500. The next one was the Rotary Club of Cary Grove. The event is the Cary Summer Farmers Market. The request was $5,000. The next one was Heroes Like Haley. The event is Heroes Like Haley 5K. Their grant request was $10,000. The next was Cary Grove Chamber Area Chamber of Commerce, the Cary Main Street Fest. The request was $25,000. And finally, the Cary Soccer Association, the 2016 Cary Grove Soccer Memorial Tournament, the Cary Soccer Memorial Tournament, and their request was $5,000. That was all of them that we received this year, all totaling $85,000.
The JC said they're still going to run Littlefin. They just found funding someplace else, so they didn't need to ask for that. So
Great.
For which one?
For the fish.
for the Littlefin.
Okay.
So how
So,
would you like
yeah.
to work through what we have in terms of the other events? It appears that we have 20 or so thousand on the table. How would you like to work through splitting that up? We've had a proposal from Trustee Cavelli that came in today, and I saw some others that were very similar to that in terms of spreads. Should we lay one on the table and then start with that for some of these other events? Reminding ourselves that the fishing derby is out of the math.
Yeah, so, I mean, I tried to be fair based on what everyone was asking for, but this is initial, I'm at room for negotiation. The soccer and track, I both said 2,500, Street Fest 10,000, Heroes for Haley 4,000, the Saints Peter and Paul, both events 3,000 each, Farmers Market 2,000, JC's 3,000.
And I would add to Trustee McAlpine's point, that somewhat direct math, it doesn't necessarily correlate to the percentage of budget that was brought up tonight in discussion. But it was splitting up the other 20 around to the other events.
Is there an opportunity for anybody to apply after this point, later in the year, or is this it? These are the
This
applications
would
that
be
we
it
have
for
now?
now.
Yeah, I mean, we're maxing the.
You know, Trustee McAlpine brought up a very good point, that one that I didn't really focus in on when I was reviewing all the applications about the percentage of budget. And that, you know, some of these budgets are, you know, a $5,000 ask, you know, $14,000 ask, and to kind of decipher what their budget concerns are and what, you know, what is it going to go to offset. One of the questions I brought up earlier too was the sustainability of this grant. Is this something that if it's not given in its entirety, will that event happen? And if not, then those funds can be reallocated to something else that could offset an expense in that regard. So that's kind of one of the questions that I had for some of these events are mainstay that they're awesome opportunities and give backs to the community, and I'd love for the village to be able to participate in a meaningful manner. It's an opportunity for us to really, there's a lot of these things that, like the Track and Cross Country Association, they bring in thousands and thousands of people. St. Peter and Paul, the same thing, the JC's the same, I mean, it's, down to the Cary Soccer Association. These are phenomenal opportunities for us to showcase our community, and it's a huge give back. It just helps with just the other revenue sources by patronizing our local restaurants, our service centers, Athletico, which is a service provider, provides services to some of these organizations too. So it's a good give back, and I'd like to make sure that we're really reviewing these things in a meaningful way, that we're not just giving the money away to offset some expense, but to have, like the Fall Fest it's about $100,000 entity, I think, from the last time from the last budget that I saw, and the $10,000 given is about 10% of their budget. So I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are on that. Or do you want to have staff go through and finalize the budgets and allocate it to leave us out of it? Or, now we have the main one that we want to focus on? I heard a couple other people talked about the success and the viability of the farmers market, which is also a very meaningful program to the village of Cary. It gets people here every Sunday for the entire summer, and it's a big draw from everywhere. From what I've been told too is that I think there's only 2 Sunday farmers markets, so that kind of sets us apart too. So those are things that we'd like to consider as well. Because before I had done that, I thought, well, we'll take whatever the largest one and then maybe kind of divide up the balance, but it's really kind of offsetting when you don't have the budgetary constraints that they have. So I would like to see if we could just turn it over to the staff and have them determine, by the budget what amount could be to get to that $20,000. Any thoughts on that?
And I don't think we necessarily have to spend all that money. I mean, it's there, but we don't necessarily have to spend it.
Right.
I think,
Proportionately, you agreed to like the budgets that they have?
no, I'm thinking maybe some of the fundraisers, I might take those out of the equation. And then the St. Peter and Paul events, I think I would take those out also. I think the 3 that I would be interested in funding would be the Family Days. I'd like to find out a little bit more about what the Family Days is, the Farmers Market, and then the Chamber of Commerce, the Main Street Fest. Those would be the 3 that I would be interested in funding.
There are representatives from some of the different community groups in the audience too, so.
That's true. I also want to know, are we going to take the approach as a board that if we're funding it once, are we going to, just like we're looking to wean everyone off, is that our approach with this, that we're going to do this one time and then next year you're on your own?
I would
mean,
suggest,
I kind of know what we're thinking here. I think a mindset for a long-term plan is kind of important.
I don't think that we can give anything more than a 1-year basis on this. I think that we intend to have gaming funds for some time. I explained earlier that there's some variability in that revenue flow, and we have state of Illinois issues that are upon us. So I don't think it's wise to assume that this is more than a 1-year commitment. But certainly the spirit of this board that sets is to try and maximize the line item for this and then distribute it out as best we can. I don't think it's logical to have agencies count on this per se, but I think it's what we're going to try to sustain. I think 30,000 is a reasonable target, but as we talked about tonight, we got a dispatch issue that's not in the budget, and we have to balance off those things continuously. So.
Well, I think that anytime you're doing a community event, when it gives us that opportunity to give back to our residents and to showcase our village, because that's really the idea. I think everybody wants to showcase the village so that we have that opportunity to get additional revenues here by people coming here, wanting to open up a shop, do something like that. So to me, that's huge to look at each one of these and say, is that going to be accomplished with this? And if we, when all is said and done, if we come through and we do an analysis, we could come back and say, in reality, if we're doing it this way, then we should be giving the Main Street Fest more money because here's the methodology that we utilized.
I'm okay with letting staff sort of divide it up, but I would like some sort of a final vote on it.
Okay.
Sure.
I agree.
Well, and just for the community that's present for this, I mean, these are awesome asks. It's what a great opportunity. I mean, I never in a million years thought that we'd get $85,000 worth of asks. I mean, says a lot about the organizations that you represent. So if you're here for that, I see some heads bobbing up and down, so I'm guessing that's what it's about. But thank you for participating in this. We'll get back to you as soon as possible if staff digest. I'm sure Jake will be handling this, right? And Mary.
Does anybody though that's here want to talk? I mean, I just am curious if anyone that came here and did a grant and wants to talk a little bit, I would love to hear from anyone that would like to. And if not, that's okay too, bud.
I'll have one comment before if anybody speaks, and that is looking at, for example, the run. That was a really good proposal. And what they want to use that money for is to add the timing to make it more of a professional type event. I think that's an awesome thing to ask for because it wouldn't be in their budget. So.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Just state your name and for the record, please.
My name's Anthony Coletti, representing the Cary Grove JCs. I first want to say thank you very much for allowing me to speak this evening and for being progressive in regards to this program. I have represented the United States Junior Chamber, the USJCs, as National Vice President this past year, and this is the first community I've actually heard open up a grant application format, and I've visited about 12 states representing the USJCs. So I thank you for that. And just to give you a little additional information about the family days that we have put a grant request in about, we want to bring a carnival back to the community. We want to allow local business owners to come out, provide food. We'll have a radio station come out and actually run their operations from the event. We will be bringing back a car show that has been a big hit in the years past when we've ran Cary Days. And we want to showcase Cary. And we want to get the families of Cary and Fox River Grove and the other communities to come out and enjoy family time. So if there's any questions from the board, I'd be more than willing to answer them for it.
I have a question. If you weren't granted yours was $8,500, I think?
Mm-hmm.
If you weren't granted that entire amount, would the event still take place?
It would be really difficult to run it without it. This first year coming back, it has been, I want to say 8 years since we ran Cary Days. And the large part of why we had to take a step back from that is the police costs, the electricity costs, additional costs of running it at the Park District. This year, we are looking at having off, not on Park District land, basically closing down a few streets within Cary, which are not huge traffic zones, and looking at alternative site. And that will assist to bring down some of the costs. If there was an opportunity similar to what the chamber is going to be able to be allocated is in-kind services, we'd be very interested in looking at that, because when we were running Cary Days, it was running, police was $5,000 to $7,000 range. For that 4-day event, we're looking at a 3-day event. So we will not be serving alcohol at this event, truly focusing on the family aspect of the event, but that also brings down the opportunity to profit from the event. Obviously, alcohol does raise money. So it would be very difficult if it wasn't a check, but it was a commitment in regards to police, that could make the event work. Otherwise, we would have to rely on local businesses sponsoring the event, which we all know, as a CPA running a tax practice, I know my clients have a harder time writing checks for sponsorships based on the economic situations.
Mayor, you're going to have the staff kind of reevaluate the applications and give us some additional feedback? Is that the next step?
Their budgets.
Budgets. I just also would ask, is there any possibility of combining any of these events? I'm listening to what you're describing, and I'm thinking, okay, I've been at the Summerfest thing 2 years in a row. It doesn't take a lot of geography. It's a small intersection. You're sounding like you got something that's much bigger, a carnival. Carnivals in the old days used to have music. We have music in the Summerfest thing, so why can't you combine the two and use the in-kind police service to offset the cost that these folks have to pay? Wouldn't something like that work? Or could it work?
They want to have an event that raises money for them.
Well, there's got to be a way for agencies to talk and figure out how you can split, intake.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing out an idea that perhaps some of these events could be partnered so that the costs are not 100% of each individual entity, but that they're shared differently, that's all.
Yeah, and the J.C.'s would 100% be interested in working with any other organizations that would like to add to the event. The purpose of this event is to bring families together and bring the community together. And we already have the Cary Grove Masons interested in participating in the event. The Cary Lions Clubs will be contacted to help ask if they would like to come out and participate in the event. So there's a lot of opportunities. The Boy Scouts will be on board as well. So we're looking at engaging as many community organizations within this event as possible. Basically, we understand that money is at a premium. So when you do write a check, we have to get the most out of a check. And we're going to be engaging as many community members that would like to be involved with our organization.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
Rick, I like your idea. I mean, especially as far as the J.C.'s, I think there was some discussion with the Cary Main Street Fest, and you guys got a little bit boxed out of it. But the one thing I think is missing from the Main Street Fest is some sort of carnival ride situation, because we have not a whole lot for kids that are 10 to 21 to do there, and this would be a perfect solution to it. So, I like where you're going with that, Rick.
We just have to find a location.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to address the village board? Brad?
Good evening, everybody. Just thank you very much for the opportunity to present the grant application. I think the village board did a terrific job putting that together. It has been a terrific partnership the last 2 years between the chamber and the village. Thank you to certainly for the financial resources that you have provided in order to set a terrific foundation for Cary Main Street Fest for the last 2 years. Thanks to Chief Finland and to Eric for the Public Works and Police, and to the Cary Fire Protection District as well for all their tremendous assistance, because it's an enormous community effort to get all of the pieces firing in one go for a full year. So we appreciate it. We come and humbly request that you guys would consider partnering with us again. I think that the other applications are a tremendous testament to what a fantastic community this is, and I think you guys have some very tough work ahead of you, to be perfectly honest. I'm agreeing with the mayor real quick. When I saw that number added up to 85, I started to sweat. I got a little nervous that, oh man, is the festival going to get any money? But I certainly appreciate the past 2 years, and I hope that we'll have another opportunity to work together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? None said. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.